Asli Erdogan is a renowned Turkish writer and human rights activist. Her most famous novel, The City in Crimson Cloak, vividly captures the life and sin of underclass Rio de Janeiro in a recreation of the myth of Orpheus. Her short story, The Wooden Birds, received the Deutsche Welle Literary Prize and has been translated into 9 languages. She recently won another prize, the Simone de Beauvoir Prize, recently just a few weeks ago in France, for human rights and women's freedom. The New York Times recently named Mrs. Erdogan to its list of one of the 11 most powerful women we met around the world in 2017. In her writing, Asli Erdogan tackles controversial issues such as torture, human rights violations in prisons, violence against women, and Kurdish rights. She's been a public voice against the totalitarian Turkish government. On August 16, 2016, soldiers in black masks barged into her home, incarcerated her on a charge of supporting terrorism. The basis for the criminal case, she was told, was her 5 years of writing articles and serving on the advisory board of a daily newspaper which the Turkish government alleged was linked to the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party. She was arrested along with more than 20 other journalists and employees of this newspaper, Özgür Gündem, which was shut down by decree as part of the state of emergency in the country following the failed coup of 2016. Ms. Erdogan was held in solitary confinement for the next 5 days, the first 2 of which she was deprived of water and jailed with other female prisoners. After 133 days in prison, Ms. Erdogan was given her first opportunity to defend herself in court. She was released from the state prison on December 29, 2016, and her travel ban was lifted on June 22, 2017. I believe her trial is still expected, and she faces a life sentence if convicted. I do want to mention that Ms. Erdogan also has a Geneva connection. In addition to being a distinguished writer and human rights activist, she's also a physicist, and in another life, perhaps, lived in Geneva for a couple of years and worked at the CERN, the European Nuclear Research Laboratory here in Geneva. So, and I believe that your first book has Geneva is part of the book. So with that, I turn the floor over to Ms. Asli Erdogan.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Hello. I'm only a writer and nothing more, not a hero, nothing like that. And my job is to give meaning to these words and these hollow phrases. And when the police came to my apartment, I was actually a writer who had an author of 9 books, some of poetry, in fact, whose work had been adapted to theater, cinema, and translated to 14 languages. So I was not at all a politically, nobody took me seriously as a political figure, let me put it this way. And all I did was 5 years of columnist work, which I tried to be the voice of the victim. Not only the Kurds, but Armenians, blacks, women, prisoners. And I never wrote slogans or anything, just to present the story of the victim. If you can do it, is more than enough, I said. And I was on the advisory board of Özgür Gündem for 5 years. And in that 5 years, there had been hundreds of cases against the paper, but none of it was reflected to the advisors because the press law is very clear. Advisors have no legal responsibility over the paper. And the advisory board never met in its history. It's a publisher, an ecologist, a writer of literature, a linguist, totally symbolic people. And suddenly, 1 month after the military, the coup attempt, this turned into a biggest crime in the history of Turkey. I mean, my apartment was busted by a group of around 50 policemen, special forces, ransacked for 7 hours. Most of my writing was in a chaotic state. I couldn't put some of it together. I was taken under custody, which was gentle for Turkish standards, and along with the journalists. But in fact, the editor-in-chief and me, we were kept in a separate place. And actually, the journalists were not arrested. They left one by one in front of me, from the prosecutor So they say this newspaper is PKK. All the journalists were free, but those three who were kept separate, we were arrested. From a prosecutor that didn't even ask me a single question, who was very kind and very apologetic. The prosecutor himself was trying to tell me that the order is beyond his control. And I was arrested from 302, the heaviest charge in the Turkish law, for distraction of the unity of the state, what Öcalan is arrested from. And to destroy the unity of the state, you must have an army, or you must have a big organization or found one. So I am, in Turkish law, the founder of PKK, which was founded when I was only 10 years old. I think, and it was until 1999, death sentence. Now it's aggravated life. And 2 weeks after me, another quite renowned journalist and writer, novelist, Ahmet Altan, was arrested. Again, what they call a Kafkaesque indictment. It's an insult to Kafka. And he was sentenced 2 days ago to aggravated life, what they asked for me. So we thought it was a joke. They would let us go in a few months. No, now they are giving aggravated life sentences to writers, journalists, and many academicians, doctors, lawyers. A huge group of people are arrested in what I call, if you have read Notre Dame, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, I say Esmeralda had more justice than I did in that court. At least there was a crime. So, and about 150,000, I will close with that, they are lying even about the numbers. A good 150,000 people have been arrested in a year and a half, which is 3 times more than the number of people in the concentration camps when the Second World War started. Thank you very much.